my question is now about collaborative conservation and what has got the not very flattering alternative name of command and control, but top down, this is what we're doing because we think it's right actions. If you were to speak to any of the presidential candidates, either of them, where is the domain where command and control or top down or the buck stops here or the responsibility is with us? In what domains does that still make the most sense? To have somebody in charge enforcing a statute or regulation without having to chat and have stakeholder input, and where's the territory where that still matters and is necessary, and where's the boundary of that territory? Where do you cross into the place where having all the citizens fully engaged is really the right way to go?
It's an excellent question. I think it is often essential that federal leadership have arrows in its quiver, so to speak, in a resource fight, if you will, or allocation question. And the trick is, because without them, if the federal government is one of many people around the table, these issues are often so difficult, so long-standing, so rooted in history and culture that there will not be a solution coming out of any number of mediated discussions. Many times the participants around the table regret that. They don't want that to be, but nobody's got a stick, either perceived or real. And you can point to many of the large, I would say, cooperative conservation deals that we did in the Clinton administration. And behind them is a stick. Now, it's not always command and control in the sense of enforcement, although it can be. The Endangered Species Act, certainly, the prospect of take enforcement is certainly central to habitat conservation planning in Southern California and elsewhere. Sometimes the stick is money. Sometimes the ability to deliver federal legislation and support. It may be the ability to designate an area as a conservation area. But there's got to be, in my experience, got to be maybe too strong, but you're going to make a lot more progress often if you have those tools available. The trick is and let me say, for example, in the water area, where the Bureau of Reclamation has contracting authority and management authority over the water supplies that are huge in the West, that's why the Interior Department can lead. And I believe very much, and this is I think there's a bit of a philosophical difference between our two administrations on this. I believe very much that the federal department should lead, should be forward-leaning, should not just participate in these discussions, and don't mean to denigrate it, but as another seat at the table, but as the representative of all Americans with an idea of where we should go. And then working with the states and the local folks and working out a deal that may look very different than what the feds originally thought was the right solution. And it's incredibly important to be open to that because these deals, if you want, these accommodations, these resolutions of long-standing conflicts will not have legs, will not persist and be long-standing unless there's buy-in at all levels. So it's an interesting and important question. It's a very delicate balance. But my criticism on the Klamath was more if Bruce Babbitt would be personally at the table next to Steve Thompson and on the phone with the folks at Mid-American Energy. And maybe that's happening behind the scenes, and it sounds like there is, and if there's a deal, I'm going to take full credit for helping push Lynn here at this conference for the deal. But I think some sort of high-profile diplomacy, if you will, on some of these big matters is extremely important to making it happen. We never would have had the Everglades deal, and arguably it's frayed because of a lack of continued attention like that. CalFed is frayed, I think, in part. Yes. Okay, well, good. We're getting a rise.
That's good. To the larger question, and then I will say something about Everglades, given the personal hundreds of hours I've spent on the topic. First of all, these are not mutually exclusive. Obviously, in any governance, one needs a suite of tools along a continuum. And by the way, I don't view these as in one bucket and another bucket and that's it. There's a continuum of tools that we have from the very regulatory prescriptive to the regulatory but flexible, for example, as in tradable permits programs and so forth, to the informational requirements as in labeling and so forth, and on along to voluntary action. So there's a continuum. All of those tools must be in play. They're not mutually exclusive. They have greater and less relevance, each of them in different circumstances. I would suggest that certainly on the regulatory front, when we're dealing with universal matters of health and safety, as in air quality conditions, water quality conditions, leaving it up to just hope is probably not good enough. We want some reliable, uniform standards that the American public can count upon. In terms of our own decision-making at the Interior Department, a number of the collaborative decisions that we've been able to achieve did have, lurking in the background, some pressure point. I mentioned the water shortages agreement on the Colorado River. Well, it was not so much a regulation looming in the background, but the fact that the Secretary of the Interior is the water master. And looming in the background was, if you guys can't figure this out, you 7 states yourself, guess what? We'll decide what the rules of the game are for water shortage. Now, who would you rather have? Us do that unilaterally, or you collectively figure it out? So that's a kind of pressure point. With some, though not all, collaborative decisions, looming in the background are ESA requirements, whereby folks can't figure out collectively how to conserve. By golly, there may be some restrictions on their ability to act. On the other hand, I meet many folks who say the only time collaboration works is if that stick is in the background. And that's simply not empirically correct. There are many, many, many places out on the landscape that I can now point to. I mentioned the Blackfoot Valley, the Blackfoot Challenge in the Blackfoot River Valley in Missoula. Those folks got together a couple of decades ago, and really they faced some land management challenges, but they didn't face specific regulatory impetus. And there are many others like that. So many of these folks just realized, ooh, our landscape is fragmenting. We need to figure out how to manage it collectively because it will benefit us in our purposes. And so they come together spontaneously. Our role, I have thought, in that effort is how do we nurture that? How do we make sure they have some resources, some money, to help facilitate the ongoing discussions? How do we make sure they have the right tools, such as consensus-based management option for NEPA, so that if they come up with a collaborative plan, we can import it as the preferred alternative, as opposed to going in our closet and making that alternative all ourselves. So not mutually exclusive. There's a continuum of measures. I think where you want less of the prescription and more of the collaboration are in those circumstances where the situation and circumstances are highly location specific, and where you want that give and take of local folks to figure out what that balance might be.